Hello, and welcome to the Mr. Grainy Millimeters YouTube channel. That sounded weird. Anyways, it has been a minute since we looked at some film cameras, so I thought, why not bust out old reliable, the Canon AF35M2, otherwise also known as the Autoboy 2, otherwise also known as the Sure Shot. A bit of background on this camera. This point and shoot camera is a camera that I've had for a very long time. It's actually been a regular mainstay of my camera lineup across about 10 or 12 years. And whenever I've wanted to shoot film and I just wanted to have some fun, this has always been my go-to film camera. I just load up a roll, head out, take some shots. This particular specimen has probably seen the most rolls of film that I've ever put through any film camera. Just as an aside, I'm generally pretty surprised how much these are worth nowadays. But we'll get into that a little bit later. How I got mine. We're gonna do a bit of story time. As I said, I've had this one for a little while. Let's hop into the Wayback Machine. We'll venture into the early 2010s, where I'm just a little 50mm at this point, a mere lad in my early 20s. During this time, thrift stores were absolutely overflowing with film cameras. I went into one of the thrift stores in the Greater Toronto area. One of the chains, I actually don't remember which specific one, either Value Village or Telly's, I don't know. Either way, it was one of those ones. I went to the electronics shelf. Between swaths of old digicams and weird fixed focus film cameras, I saw this for $2. So off I went and purchased it. I got home, and I think the pack of AA batteries that I bought to test this with also cost me $2. But I put the pack in, and it fired right up. And so I put a roll through, and here we are, a decade and a bit later. An exciting story, I know. But when I bought this camera, I kind of just assumed that these were prolific, and I guess they kind of are. But over the years after I bought this Autoboy, it would actually not be the only time I encountered these things. I actually had a number of them across this time frame, and almost all of the time they worked perfectly fine after I put a set of batteries in them. I remember selling a couple of these after putting a roll through them. I remember literally giving away, I think, like 2 Autoboys. I guess I should have kept more. Hindsight is unpleasant that way. But what I'm trying to say is the past was the past. And sometimes I miss those times where you could get a film point and shoot for a toonie and then come back a week later and get another one for another toonie. What is the AF35M2? Well, aside from being a camera with an identity crisis, this is a film point-and-shoot camera released in 1983, a successor to the AF35M or Autoboy 1. It features a 38mm f2.8 lens composed up of 4 elements in 4 groups. Minimum focusing distance for this is 0.9 meters, and it uses a triangulation-based IR beam system for autofocus. So it's an active AF system. The camera is, as you'd expect, fully automatic. The only thing you can really set on this thing is the film speed, and it has the ability to set speeds from 50 to 1000. No DX coding for this camera here. Nothing to read it. The camera picks the shutter speed for you, and its range of speed is 1/8 of a second to 1/500th of a second. The camera features a pretty large 0.45 times magnification optical viewfinder, and when you look through it, you have frame lines and indications for close focus via parallax corrected projected frame lines. Additionally, the frame lines are bright line lines, which is a nice touch. And on the bottom row of the finder, you'll find a focus guide, which indicates where the camera is focused. The camera also features a built-in flash, and it uses it has a guide number of 12. Additionally, there is a self-timer feature here, and it's also labeled the pre-focus, which we'll get into later. And the camera is powered by AA batteries, like these. And apparently, without the flash, the AA batteries are good to power the camera for 50 rolls of 36 shot rolls. That's 1,800 shots. What? That sounds crazy. Anyways, apparently if you're firing the camera with the flash on in every shot, the set of AA's will last 7 rolls of 36 shot rolls. That's 252 shots. All right, enough about the crazy numbers. The camera's rough dimensions are that it's 125 millimeters by 75.5 millimeters by 46 millimeters. And it comes in at roughly 300 grams minus the batteries, or around 345 grams with regular alkalines in them. When it was new, this camera cost just under 43,000 yen, or around 58,000 yen today in poop times, or about 390 US dollars, or around 545 Canadian buckaroos. You can find more info on this camera in the link that I'm going to post to you in the description below, which is the manual for it, as well as on the Canon Museum webpage. But I will point out that there were some discrepancies on the Canon Museum webpage compared to the actual manual that was scanned and uploaded. Odd, but whatever. Operation and feel. All right, from this point on, I'm just going to refer to this as the Autoboy. I'm not going to try to switch between the names and whatever. My particular one is labeled the AF35M2, but Autoboy is just quicker. Anyways, the Autoboy is pretty solidly built, despite its all plastic nature, and it's all the same hard plastic. This is where things kind of get a little bit interesting, where on a lot of other cameras at the time, you tend to find manufacturers were blending together hard plastics with faux leathers or soft rubberized overlays on top of the plastics, where the Canon, as I said, went all hard plastic. They did a couple things though to mitigate the fact that the body would just be kind of slippy plastic bits, and it may be difficult to grip if they just designed it to be flat like some other cameras. But let's walk through some of what they did. First, you have a grip. It is small, but it's quite functional. And the plastic is formed so you can wrap your lower 3 fingers around it and securely grip it. Additionally, on top of your lower 3 fingers, you have a bit of a finger jam here, so you can rest your fingers and it can rest on top of or underneath the jam, providing a little more stability. On the back, you can see that the hard plastic is formed with a bit of a texture there to improve handling. And while I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, the film door hinge is raised up here. And with that, it provides a tiny bit of a perch for the palm or thumb on your hand. And it also improves grippage a little bit. All of this means that holding the camera is actually fairly comfortable, although it could have done with a proper rear thumb perch here. A side benefit of using this all hard plastic build is that you don't get deterioration that you would normally get with a camera this old, which might have implemented the soft touch textured plastic overlay or the faux leather on top, which tends to make either sticky or flaky messes. And more importantly, the battery door on this camera doesn't use any of the flexible plastics that are more notorious on other cameras for just snapping with age. So with this, it is a proper hinge, and I find that the battery doors tend to be relatively reliable on these cameras, although they are also a part that I have noticed can go on them. But it's less ridiculous than the ones that are just a flappy plastic thingy that snap off much more easily. And barring the camera hasn't experienced a battery explosion, for the most part, these tend to hold up pretty well, considering that at the time of this recording, it's around 42-ish years old for the oldest ones. Now, the camera isn't as compact as, say, the AF600 from Nikon, or as cool as the Olympus Mooj, but the Autoboy is practical. The controls are very well laid out, and combined with words and pictograms, you don't even really need a manual to figure out this camera at all. Just kind of pick it up and go, almost. First, the front. You can see that instantly there are little pictograms to indicate the power switch, with the full circle filled in being closed and open clearly being open and on. Next, you can spot that there's a window for film speed. And obviously with that, you need to be able to set the film speed. So if you feel around, you'll feel there's a switch here. So you can slide it and scroll through speeds till you get the one you want. Looking in the front some more, you'll find the self-timer and or pre-focus, more on that later. And on the top plate, you'll find that there is a shutter button raised a bit. Obviously, you got a shot counter over there and a film rewind with a unlock that you clearly got to press before you're able to rewind. Yay, interlocks. On the back, you have your switch to pop up the flash. And on the side, you have a film release door. Additionally, almost forgot on the back, you have a little indicator LED over here when the flash is ready to be fired. Again, looking through the back, you have a relatively big finder. Again, especially if you compare it to one of these. And the focus indication on it is nice and easy to see. The only thing that's annoying is that the shutter doesn't have half clicks. You have to use the weird pre-focus thingy, because otherwise this shutter only does full presses, and once you do the full press, it takes a photo and then the focus scale moves to tell you where it focused, which is not that useful. And it seems strange since at the time, half-press technology definitely existed. The Mamiya M, the Minolta AF2, both can do it. I believe these also half-press a bit, but at any rate, the Autoboy did not. So what you gotta do instead is that you have to activate pre-focus, and you do that by activating the self-timer, and then you can press the shutter. And if you're happy with where you think the focus is, you can press the shutter again, and it'll fire. Or if you wait 10 seconds, the self-timer will just kick in and it'll fire anyways. But what if you want to cancel it? Well, this is where, if you were on any other camera, you would half press, let go, and that would be it. On this camera, no. Let's say you've gone through this, you've pre-focused, and you decide, I don't want to do it anymore. What do? Yeah, 10 seconds. All right, first, you gotta flip the camera off, and then you have to flip your pre-focus off, and then turn the camera back on, and you're good to shoot. Easy peasy, right? So much easier than letting go of a half press. I personally just think it is a bit crazy since this camera has a very nice finder, and combine that with some of the worst implementation for the pre-focus is just strange. Now, I realize I just spent a not inconsiderable amount of time poo-pooing the pre-focus thingy, but I'll be honest, most of the time I never used it. About 95% of the time, the number that I'm randomly pulling out my bum, I would just compose and shoot with a center point and let the camera take the wheel in its fully automated camera EUA. And most of the times it worked out. I do admit there are times where I missed the shot, and it was only after I pressed the shutter and saw that the focus guide had went all crazy that I realized I needed to either reshoot or pass up on the shot. But I also have to remember that this is a camera that features a fairly old and rudimentary autofocus system. So I wasn't always super expecting that things were going to go super well. There's one thing I do want to mention about this camera though, and you might have noticed it while I was playing with it. The noise. The camera automates everything. Film advance, autofocus, shutter cocking. From powering on to taking a shot, this is pretty loud. It's basically impossible to be stealthy with this camera. Even popping up the flash has a loud sound to it. Image quality. Just a note, for this review, I've shot the sample roll with a pretty expired FujiColor 100. And additionally, they were all scanned on my PlusTech 8200 at around 3200 DPI, resulting in about an approximately 16 megapixel scan. With that in mind, I do think that the images that came out of this camera are quite nice. The wide-ish 38mm lens kind of means that you do get quite a bit of depth. Combine that with the fact that the shutter range is kind of small also means that this camera is generally going to stop down in daylight, which means you're going to have even more depth. Even though the lens wide open can open up to f2.8. This means that unless you're getting real close up in moderate light, you're probably not going to be getting huge amounts of bokeh. I do caution that if you are going to get close, try to get some of that gorgeous blurry blur. I actually do recommend in this scenario using the pre-focus. Again, the autofocus is simple, and I found that up close it was more prone to issues. So by using the pre-focus, you can get yourself a little bit of a sanity check and make sure that your camera is at least appearing to focus on the thing that you want and not something far off in the distance that you don't want. Moving on, I found that the images that came out of this camera generally have pretty good color and the lens is really quite sharp. The pictures, to my eyeball, had a lot of pop using my expired FujiColor, and I found that most of the time this camera's metering system was able to provide pretty accurate metering for the scene, with the exception of pretty heavily backlit subjects where you'll typically get underexposure, and you'll need to pull that up in your film scans accordingly. And yeah, in those scenarios, it can get a bit janky if you need to pull from your scan, but otherwise, fairly reliable, predictable meter. Here's the thing though. I generally think that this camera is quite good. And honestly, I think that for a lot of these point and shoot style cameras from the 80s, I just find generally they produce fairly nice images with a nice nostalgic look, while again actually making good pictures. Whether from this or this, or this, when you get your film back, you actually get an image that you might want to print, that you might want to scan, that you might want to get blown up. I'm going to get a bit ranty here, but I can now kind of understand the appeal of these older cameras, especially compared to something like older digicams or cheaper fixed focus film cameras. And I get those cameras also give you a vintage feel, a vibe, if you will. But I find for those, that's about where it stops. Sure, when I play with them, I can have fun with the pictures, and again, you can kind of get the vibes, I guess. But almost none of the time do I feel compelled to print the images, blow up the images, or really show them off. On the Autoboy, on the Nikon, I do. So yeah, these are fun, and the images are actually good. Let's have a look at our sample gallery, so you can judge for yourself whether or not you think the images are all right. Recommendation and conclusion. This is a bit of a tough one. I legitimately really love this camera. As I mentioned, I've had this particular one for a very long time. And if you can find it at a thrift store for a couple bucks, maybe a toonie, no brainer. Pick it up, test it out, see if you too like it. But at its current going online auction platform rate, I can see that they're going for somewhere between $65 and $140, depending on how complete the set is for one of these cameras, whether they have boxes, accessories, that kind of thing. But I find that even on the low end, $65 US is a bit pricey for these things. That said, compared to some of the more trendy cameras like this, or this sounds like a bargain sometimes. Additionally, since the Autoboy isn't focused on being small as possible, the ergonomics are generally pretty nice. And it's not like this camera is huge, it's just not tiny. And here's what I think. If you just want a point and shoot overall, and you just want it to be a pretty solid one, this is a pretty good buy. Sure, it doesn't have the ability to half press, but for the most part, I think most people are able to live without it. I enjoyed mine now for a very long time, and I figure I'm going to keep enjoying it into the future as well. I do just lament the days where you could find these for toonie at the bottom of a bin. But keep in mind, this thing is a loud camera. Don't use it if you need stealth. But otherwise, the images it makes are something nice. That's all I got for now. Let me know what you think about this point-and-shoot camera, or let me know what point-and-shoot film camera do you like? Do you perhaps have one of these too? And are you also baffled by its inability to grasp the concept of the half-press shutter button? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Maybe a super thanks if you're into that. Till next time, bye.